the Commune experimented with a completely new way of life. All private property was abolished. Houses, animals, land and production tools became collective property. Nurseries and free, compulsory schools liberated women from their maternal duties so they could work in the fields. The family unit disappeared, and children were made to live by the new rules of collective life. The individual was nothing more than a cog in a big machine.
The furniture was seized for firewood, and everything that could be destroyed was destroyed. The pigs, the sheep, everything was collectivized. Even the pots and pans were seized because families weren't allowed to cook.
The aim was to force the peasants to take their meals in the commune's collective canteens. In some of them, they even abolished money. A system of work points was established. Food was distributed according to merit, i.e., each person's capacity to fulfill the production objectives. The notion of wages disappeared.
It was compulsory to turn up every day. If your name wasn't on the attendance list, you were punished and you lost work points. The fewer work points you earned, the less food they gave you. Oh, it was miserable.
Brave New World, with another parable which was put forth more recently in George Orwell's book 1984. I'm inclined to think that the scientific dictatorships of the future, and I think there are going to be scientific dictatorships in many parts of the world, will be probably a good deal nearer to the Brave New World pattern than to the 1984 pattern. They will be a good deal nearer, not because of any humanitarian qualms in the scientific dictators, but simply because the Brave New World pattern is probably a good deal more efficient than the other. That if you can get people to consent to the state of affairs in which they are living, the state of servitude, the state of being, well, it seems to me that the nature of the ultimate revolution with which we are now faced is precisely this, that we are in process of developing a whole series of techniques which will enable the controlling oligarchy, who have always existed and presumably always will exist, to get people actually to love their servitude. People can be made to enjoy a state of affairs which, by any decent standard, they ought not to enjoy. And these methods, I think, are a real refinement on the older methods of terror, because they combine methods of terror with methods of acceptance. But then there are various other methods which one can think of. There is, for example, the pharmacological method. This was one of the things I talked about in Brave New World. And the result would be that, I mean, you can imagine a euphoric which would make people thoroughly happy even in the most abominable circumstances. I mean, these things are possible.
This new digital world that they're installing, folks, is very much like what you've just seen outlined there. It's crazy, and this is what they intend to do, and they're doing it everywhere.
Picture your life in a place where everything you do, what you buy, how you behave, is tracked. The government gives you a score, and the score is a measure of how trustworthy you are as a citizen, and determines what you're allowed to do, like ever. Boarding a train, getting a mortgage, all goes back to this score. It's called social credit. It's actually happening in China. The system's eyes are in big data, artificial intelligence, and roughly 200 million surveillance cameras. She's a 752. That's her rating with Sesame Credit. You start with 1,000 points, and you can print out your report anytime. You lose points for things like jaywalking, littering, tossing cigarette butts, or spreading rumors. Cameras do a lot of the surveillance work, but it's pretty analog too. like posters that list the ways you can gain or lose points. And each night, local TV shows the surveillance highlights of the day. She's an information collector, a paid enforcer who walks around and writes down deeds about her neighbors. Like the man who carried a drunk person home. Things like this are good deeds, she said. But the farmer overheard swearing and being rude? Yeah, bad deeds. Her quota is 10 a month. She likes the work.
And there's different ways that they're doing it in different countries. They're rolling it out everywhere though. They're even rolling out the digital ID and digital currency in Jamaica.
In the coming weeks and days, I'll be making certain announcements regarding the acceleration of Jamaica's intention to become a fully digital society. We are well on our way to this. We have established the national identification system. We have put in place our digital currency. We have given directions to our ministries to digitalize their operations. Most of our ministries are now moving from paper-based systems to digital systems. Our military is transitioning. The society is moving very quickly, very rapidly to become digital. Our banking consumers are seeing it as well because the banks are moving very rapidly to digital. You have something now called artificial intelligence. Very soon this position of a human being exchanging cash and so on, that is going to disappear from the banking system very soon. And you are going to have to interface with machines. I don't want it to be a scary thought, but it is a thought that we all have to embrace.
And they're doing it in a lot of Western countries because, you know, many of them are just going to let them do it because many of them, such as Australia, such as Canada, a lot of areas in the UK, these people haven't really seen war. I mean, the UK has seen war, but people in Australia and people in the United States, they've never seen war on their own territory. Same in Canada, you know, so it's kind of easy for them to do it. They've never seen tyranny in their own backyard, put it that way. When I say they've never seen war, I mean, sure, soldiers have seen war and blah, 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 but they've never seen tyranny creep into their country in their own backyard before. It's unheard of in Australia, it's unheard of in the United States, in the UK, in Canada. Whereas people in Europe are used to seeing governments try this over the centuries, and the people have always fought back. So different strokes for different folks. They're rolling it out right across Australia as quickly as they can. They're also replacing the Australian population at the moment. They're now having a massive migrant influx into Australia from Africa, of all places. Not the Middle East, the way we've seen with Europe, but from Africa. So there's lots and lots of black people coming in, and apparently all the advertising in the country is even changing.
This is Sydney, Australia. We have been suffering from a psychological operation to facilitate the mass immigration of African immigrants into Australia. Every single advertisement across the country has turned African overnight, even though the dominating demographics are Asian people, because we live in Asia, and white people, because Australia is a predominantly white nation. White people built this country, and now we're suffering from the elites destroying the country from within. Australia's geopolitical future is in tatters. We have no more power in the region. China is dominating Asia, and therefore Asians don't want to come to a dying country. They're fleeing Australia. And so the elites who want to prop up this feudal economic system by having as many people in properties as possible, reducing the amount of properties and increasing the amount of immigrants that share those properties so that the wealth goes to the elites, have decided that the only way to keep this country alive is mass immigration from Africa. Australia is flooded with Africans over the last 12 months. It's almost claustrophobic in my country, and I'd never seen them before, to be honest. Every day the last 12 months, there has been an African murdering a white person. There has been a love triangle with an African sleeping with someone's wife. There has been children being murdered. There's been stabbings in the streets. And on top of that, people who talk about it like myself get cancelled. If you apply for a job with an African, the elites will give the job to the African over you. White Australian men like myself, and also Asians, have been forgotten in this country. And that is evidence that this country is about to totally collapse. Now, China is dominating the area, and if we have more African leaders in this country, the Asians on our doorstep, they don't care about our woke culture that we have just adopted. They're not going to want to trade with us. And this country will become a third world country by 2034. I've been saying this for a while. 2034 is the year that Australia becomes a third world shithole.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? So they're sort of preparing for it. They're replacing the people in Australia, the great replacement that we've heard about so much. And that's what they're doing, and they're doing it everywhere. In Europe, as I was saying, the people there have seen tyranny. They've seen firsthand over the centuries, many, many times, the governments have tried to repress the people, and the people have always pushed back, to some degree anyway. So what they've done, of course, is they have allowed Europe to become overrun with migrants. And this was one of the plans when they took out Gaddafi. I mean, when Hillary Clinton took out Gaddafi, not only did they steal trillions, I mean, they stole so much money from Gaddafi and funneled it all into the Clinton Foundation and other places like that. But Gaddafi had said, if you take out Libya, Europe will turn black. He said, Libya is the cork in the bottle of Africa. Libya takes care of the migrant issue, takes care of the refugee issue. People flee Africa because they're having a really hard time in Africa. They get to Libya and they find a better life. And so they don't go any further. And if you take down Libya, then Europe will be overrun with migrants within 5 years. That's what he said. So of course they took out Libya. And now we see Europe is overrun with migrants. And I mean, what's going on in France? I don't know whether you've been watching the news, although apparently a lot of it isn't on the news, but it's just outrageous what's going on in France. There's riots all over the place. The country is virtually in a state of civil war.
тракторла чиниться.
L'étoile rouge devant ma face, c'est un diplôme d'honneur pour elle, rien pour moi. Mon honneur s'efface peu à peu, chez nous les cœurs se glacent très tôt. La peur se tasse, pour rien les frères se fracassent. Les patates volent, les mauvais coups s'enchaînent comme cette chienne de vie habituée au vacarme. Pour éviter les larmes dans les poches, les gosses glissent des larmes. Pas facile de vivre avec des drames. Micro en main, j'envoie ma cam de soucis sur ton phonogramme, régénère la flamme.
nom de Dieu. Oh non, c'est délicat ce rang.
Oh, oh, wesh, wesh.
Comme bordel ça. C'est quoi ce bordel, frère?
Mal dominant partie 2, cousin. Ah, c'est votre... machine à café.
Je me suis dit non, prenez pas. Moi je rentre pas, je reste ici.
Ils ont sorti les gros moyens.
Ah oui.
On s'en fout les gars.
Viens là, viens là.
Pretty radical stuff. It's like France has been invaded. France has been invaded by its own government. Its own government, Macron's government, has brought all of these migrants into France and is now allowing them to just run amok across the country. And they've been doing really radical things, folks, and they're just crazy, these people. At least it's some of the infrastructure they're damaging, they're sort of taking themselves out at the same time. Yeah, I mean, what do you even say to that, folks? I think I'll just chop down a pole on the head of my friends. But they've been doing outrageous things, just looting everywhere, police on fire, letting off fireworks all through the place and setting fire to everything. Crazy stuff. Even I think last night they actually freed all the zoo animals. And so now you've got zebras.
Au bout, il y a une girafe. Wesh.
And elephants. And even lions running around the street in Paris.
La tête de homme, il y a des lions qui tournent dans Denissa. Elle fait de bel écart. C'est une dinguerie. Il y a des lions, ma gueule. Ils se baladent. T'es mort, ma gueule. C'est quoi ce truc, frère? Eh, bon, le checker, là, la tête. T'es moi le dernier comme il est gros, là. On laisse se balade dans le quartier. T'es moi comme ils sont gros. C'est pas rien de sauter dessus, hein. Ils vont vite, hein. Sur la tête, moi, il y a des lions qui tombent dans le Nissan.
Mais bombarde-moi.
Vas-y, accélère.
Oh, le fait, il est mort.
Oh, ils vont le tuer.
Ouais, ils vont le tuer, il est mort, il est mort.
Oh là là.
Mais vous nous concernez, il est mort, là, je peux même pas accélérer vers l'avant.
You know, this is essentially a state of war. Paris is in a state of war, but the government is refusing to admit it. They're saying, oh, it's migrant riots because someone was shot. Well, they shot them to spark the riots, and it's all part of the same plan, folks. See, different strokes for different folks. A lot of the people in Europe aren't going to consent to this smart grid, so they have to completely destroy and collapse the country in order to allow their phoenix to rise from the ashes. And that's what they intend to do. And it's just out of control, folks, what they're doing. What's going on in France is literally out of control. And even with this smart grid they want to roll out, I mean, it's failing all over the place. The Commonwealth Bank app failed the other day, and so no one could access any of their funds. The new licence in Victoria, new digital licence, was a dismal failure when they trialled it in Ballarat.
A major technical error into Victoria's first attempt at a digital licence has left thousands doubting the long-awaited system.
Yes, Sarah, and they're blaming a technical glitch. Ballarat is the first place in the state to receive a digital driver's licence. It's the pilot program before being rolled out across the state. But in Vic Road's first attempt at a digital licence, there has been a monumental stuff-up. They have written an email to thousands of eligible drivers to sign up, but they've got their names wrong, not spelt wrong, just completely wrong. One consumer writing on social media, I'm not signing up to a digital system if they can't get the basics correct.
And with all the stuff that's going on in Australia, in the middle of all this, they're still talking about this voice legislation, which they're claiming is going to give equal rights to the original people. It's not, it's actually going to take their rights away from them. Because if you look at the Australian Constitution, look at how the country is structured, you find out that the original people in Australia still have their original sovereignty. They're outside the jurisdiction of the Australian government. The Australian government has been trying to deal with this for so many years. It's tried all sorts of methods to bring them in under the Constitution, to make everybody equal, all this sort of stuff that they portray it as, when really it's just removing their sovereignty from them, and it's giving more power to the government. And this voice legislation is probably the most insidious of them all. And of course the PM is confident that he's going to get it through, even though everybody's against it. And I would say that's because the votes are completely rigged and they're just going to put it any way they want. But if you really look into this, folks, you'll find that the main advocate, the main spokesperson for this, who is supposed to be an Indigenous man by the name of Thomas Mayer, you find he's actually not Indigenous at all. His grandfather or great-grandfather actually migrated to Australia from the Philippines. So the guy actually, as the spokesperson for the whole thing, isn't even an original Australian. So how can he speak for the Australian people? How can he speak for the original people of Australia if he's not one himself? Such a scam, folks. He's just a mouthpiece for the government. And the fact that they would do that, you know, blatant fraud, putting blatant disinformation out there and making you think something is something else. You know, the guy's not an Aboriginal, he's a Filipino. They're bringing in legislation as well to combat misinformation in Australia. There's a new bill, what is it? It's the, well, I don't know the name of the bill, but it's Australia's new misinformation laws. And when you look at what is on the chopping block and what they intend to do and what sort of things they intend to prohibit, it's absolutely incredible, folks. It's a complete removal of free speech. They're saying that anything, you know, you can be charged, and the charges are outrageous as well. The fines are outrageous, up to $2 million, $200,000, $2 million or 2% of your gross GDP or whatever, you know, like, it's ridiculous, the fines that they want to impose.
Social media companies will be fined millions of dollars if they allow the spread of disinformation and misinformation on their platforms in a new crackdown by the federal government. Communications Minister Michelle Rowland will draft legislation allowing the Australian Communications and Media Authority to impose industry-wide standards enforcing social media platforms to remove potentially harmful content. Fines for systemic breaches could amount up to $2.75 million or 2% of the company's global turnover if it is higher than the maximum penalty.
And you look at some of the things that they've got on here that they're classing as disinformation and misinformation and things that they want to prosecute you for. It's pretty outrageous, folks. But the thing is, you look a little further and you look who's excluded from these misinformation laws. Well, fancy that. It's news and government departments and education institutions are excluded from these new laws. And again, you go and look at what these things are, look at the guidelines, and look at what they're giving us, and look at what the government has done in the last few years. It's just outrageous. So, I mean, pretty well every one of these guidelines and every one of these things they're putting in place should be used against them. I mean, look at it. Hatred. Well, what about the amount of hatred the police showed towards the people, the brutality they showed towards the people, the hatred the government showed for any criticism of what it was doing, its refusal to look at any facts, its refusal to pay attention to anything, the way it killed so many elderly people in nursing homes through drugs like remdesivir in order to get the COVID numbers up. I would suggest this displays a slight amount of hatred towards the people that we've seen by these politicians, wouldn't you? Look at the next one. Any disruption of public order or society. Well, what do you think they did for the last 3 years? How many businesses have been closed? Stopping people from travelling, stopping people from going 5 kilometres from their home, stopping people from doing anything, stopping people from hugging their family, going to school, going to work, doing anything. That was a pretty major disruption to society, I would think. What about the next one? Any harm to the integrity of the Australian democratic process. Well, I mean, look what they just did. Over the last 3 years, did you vote on that, folks? Was this what you wanted to do? Did you want to destroy your business? Did you want to stay home? Did you want to go into lockdown? Did you want to have to be forced to inject yourself with a toxic poison, which seems to be killing tens of thousands of people? Did you want to do any of this sort of stuff, folks? Oh no, it was just a democratic process, was it? Yeah, I think they've already way overstepped their mark in that one. Any harm to the environment? Well, actually, the list of harms these people have done to the environment is too long to actually put into one video, so we'll just let that one stand for itself. And you've got any economic or financial hardship to Australia or the economy. Well, Exhibit A, the last 3.5 years, and all the shit these parasites pulled and all the lies they told through this COVID scamdemic. Yeah, it's outrageous, folks. I mean, they're taking the piss. They're honestly taking the piss with these laws. It's just ridiculous. Just thinking they can get away with it. At least they're fighting for equality, though, hey? Oh, wait. Yeah, equality. That sounds perfectly equal to me. Something else they've got in store for us, folks. They've been trialling flamethrowers on robot dogs. Yeah, of course, that's completely necessary. I can absolutely see why you would want these robot dogs to have flamethrowers attached to them. Yeah, of course, especially if you're moving towards a one world system where it's going to be one world global governance. So you're not going to be really fighting wars with anyone because it's all going to be a one world system, but we need these flame-throwing robot dogs, to fight in wars? Against the people, of course. Good way to keep people in line. Just send FIDAR around to keep watch over them. Incredible, folks. And they're doing other shit as well now. They're spraying the skies. They're saying they've got to, I mean, we know they're spraying the skies. They've been doing it for ages.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Yeah, but anyway, now they're admitting that they're putting particles up in the sky. They're doing it from little water vapor machines. They're putting out on boats. We've told you for years, folks, there's these platforms out there with huge water vapour machines on them that are creating all the storms. But anyway, I know they can't control the weather, even though they admit they can. But here, they're now saying that scientists, we've got to trust the scientists, folks, have got this wonderful idea to brighten the clouds. So they're using these machines on boats and they're sending it up into the sky to brighten the clouds, to reflect the sun away from the earth, to cool down the coral. You know, the coral exists in tropical waters. Well, they're trying to kill the coral so they can blame climate change or whatever. It can't be anything we're doing to the sky, no.
So last year out here we conducted a proof of concept experiment where we showed that it's technically feasible to pump seawater and atomize it into trillions per second of tiny little seawater droplets, which in theory can go on to help brighten clouds and cool the reef. This year what we're really interested in looking at is the behaviour of that plume of sea salt droplets as it drifts away from the boat. There's a few critical questions around that. How many of those droplets make it up to cloud height? And how does the atmospheric turbulence and the winds spread those droplets? And these questions will help us to design a system for the future that may be able to work over the whole reef.
Just leave nature alone, you people. It's just incredible. Absolutely insane what these people are doing. And like, again, brightening the clouds, making it more reflective, creating this silvery sky that we've got these days. Have you noticed that? The sky isn't blue anymore, it's kind of a silvery blue. Microsoft Silverlight. Interesting when you look at the natures of light and the nature of light, the nature of sunlight, the nature of moonlight. I've talked about this before, I think a few years ago I mentioned all this. But sunlight is gold, it's warm, it's life-giving, it promotes growth, it promotes healing, and it's dry. Moonlight, on the other hand, and again, moonlight is supposed to be reflected sunlight. And yet if you reflect light or heat or anything in a mirror, it generally comes back much in the state that it was original before it was reflected. So when you look at moonlight, moonlight is not gold, it's silver. It's not warm, it's cold. It's actually, on a bright moonlit night, if you stand in the shade of a tree, it's actually warmer than it is standing in the direct moonlight. It's not dry, it's wet, and it doesn't promote growth and healing, it promotes sepsis, bacteria. These are where all the fungi and all the greeblies come out at night when the moonlight's very bright and it's kind of wet and cold outside, because it's wet as well, it's damp. Totally different light, but it's a silver light. And when you look at what they're doing to the sky, it's like they're trying to turn the entire Earth cycle into silver light, so it's a septic cycle. A cycle that promotes disease, promotes dankness. You know, it would make sense with everything else they're doing, folks. But anyway, I think that's about all I have to say. I just wanted to come and give you a quick rundown, show you what's going on in France. It's outrageous, and talk about what's going on in Australia with this voice legislation. You know, I don't know how anyone could have any confidence in their government anymore. Oh yeah, something else that I want to mention while I think of it is, have you noticed that there's a malaria outbreak in Texas and a malaria outbreak in Florida? You know, now what could possibly have caused that? Remember recently, Bill Gates released billions of genetically modified mosquitoes in Florida and Texas. And now, of course, there are malaria outbreaks in Florida and Texas, but thank God they're onto it. They're working on a vaccine for us. Incredible, folks. I mean, these people are nothing if not predictable. But yeah, that's going on. But I think, yeah, that's about all I want to say. We've seen how much they're wiping out all the food factories and all that sort of stuff. And if you've got any idea about 3D printed meat and where that comes from, well, here's a little bit of insight into who might be behind that concept.
שמיועדת להחליף משחטה. לשאלתך לפני כן, פה אנחנו טוענים את המדפסת הזו בתאי גזע שאנחנו יודעים למיין לשריר ולשומן, והיא יודעת להדפיס טונות ביום. טונות? טונות של בשר מתורבת ביום. זה רק לשם ההמחשה, אתה תוכל לבחור את הסטייק שלך, והמדפסת תתחיל לשחרר סטייקים בקצב תעשייתי. סירליון, אני לא יודע אם אתה אוהב יותר שומן או פחות שומן.
כך באמצע.
באמצע. View order, slide to print. ופה בעצם המדפסת מתחילה לייצר סטייקים. סטייקים, הייחודיות פה היא שתאי הגזע נשארים חיים אחרי שהם מודפסים. סטייק יהיה מוכן בסביב הדקה. דקה.
Yeah, and that's what they want you eating. I mean, what we lovingly call goy slop, pressed into what assumes to be a steak. Crazy shit, folks, but of course, if Benjamin Netanyahu's overseeing the whole process, well, what could possibly go wrong, folks? Aren't we lucky? Aren't we lucky to have these people looking after us? And even with everything that's going on in Europe, I mean, different strokes for different folks. They want to completely deculturalise Europe. They want to turn it into basically a race of coffee-coloured people. So many rapes happening. Rapes through Sweden, rapes through Germany, people being killed. Riots now across France, and these riots have now spilled into Belgium. And of course, then it will spill into the Netherlands, it will spill into Germany. This is how you take Europe down, and then they have to stand up and say, well, look, enough is enough. And we're going to have to impose martial law, we're going to have to give everyone digital IDs, and blah, 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 blah. You know, they have to destroy the fabric of society so it becomes unrecognisable. That's the only way they're going to do it in Europe.
Europe has not yet learned how to be multicultural, and I think we're going to be part of the throes of that transformation, which must take place. Europe is not going to be the monolithic societies that they once were in the last century. Jews are going to be at the center of that. It's a huge transformation for Europe to make. They are now going into a multicultural mode, and Jews will be resented because of our leading role. But without that leading role and without that transformation, Europe will not survive.
And that's what they're in the process of doing. I mean, Macron has successfully destroyed Paris. Apparently he was out dancing at an Elton John gig last night or something. I mean, you know, well, the world is burning. This is what the head of the country is doing. This guy needs to be dragged out on the street and hung. He honestly does. And all these terrorists, all these people out there burning things and chopping down lampposts and letting zoo animals out. I mean, the country's at war. This is a war. You've been invaded. If you choose to deny that and you're just going to let the police run around and try to, you know, stand up against these people, forget it. You've already lost. Your country's been invaded. The invasion has been instigated by your very own Prime Minister, who brought all of these young men, and we told you 2 years ago they're bringing in all these migrants who are all young men of fighting age. You're not seeing families come in, you're not seeing children come in. These are not refugees they're bringing into your country. These are forces that are going to be used to destroy your country. They're all young men of fighting age who all hate France and hate Europe, and they hate the West. They hate what all these people have done to them. They've been taught to be extremist Muslims, which is all concocted in the West. Muslim extremism, the first books on Muslim extremism were printed from Pensacola University in the United States. And the first concept of Muslim extremism came from Zbigniew Brzezinski teaching people in the Afghani war against Russia. Brzezinski went in there and he convinced the people that the Russians weren't just attacking their country, they were attacking their faith. And they trained them to be Muslim extremists. It's all been created by design to do exactly what it's doing. And of course, all run by someone that likes to stay out of the picture and pretend they're innocent all the time, who like to wear small hats, who seem to be celebrating all of these wars and all of this destruction of Europe and everything that's going on in the world because it means great times for them. So yeah, so that's pretty much the state of the world, folks. Pretty crazy shit. Pretty crazy shit. I found another place to live, by the way, folks, for those who are interested in that. We've got another place just around the corner. Going to be moving over the next 10 days, and we'll be there for the next 3 months and then maybe back where we are. We'll see what happens, see if something happens with this other bar we want to try to open, Casa de los Cuervos, see if that happens, who knows. Kind of working on it, just seeing how things play out. Like I said, I do intend to go back to Australia at some stage, not necessarily to live, but I need to go back there to just sort out all my shit. I mean, I've got a lot of stuff who's in, it's all in a friend of mine's shed. I mean, I can't just sort of leave it there for him to look after. I mean, I've got to do the right thing and get back there and tidy all this up. it's just not fair on him, you know. So whether I stay there or not, I mean, that'll depend on the situation in Australia when I get back there. But I do intend to go back, hopefully before the end of the year. So, you know, that's the plan anyway. So, but yeah, like I said, I don't know whether I'm going to be living there. I'm just going to play things by ear and see what happens. Who knows? I mean, I've had a lot of people emailing me saying, oh, if you're moving back to Australia, well, I don't know whether I'm moving back. I don't know whether I'm leaving Mexico. I don't know any of that sort of stuff. I'm just kind of trying to get out and do things while I still can, because I don't think it's going to be that easy to travel in the not too distant future, folks. So I think if you want to get anything done, now's the time to do it. Yeah. Something else I wanted to mention that I meant to mention on the last few talks, but I've forgotten to, is something Jeff's involved in, like Anacapulco's involved in. They had a seminar a couple of weeks ago, a few weeks, maybe a month ago, which was kind of a wellness masterclass. Yeah, you can sign on, you can watch, like there's like 2 or 3 days worth of videos, speakers and stuff, sharing all sorts of amazing information. And it's actually really worth looking at, folks. I've gone and had a look at it myself, and it's worth checking out. If you want to try to get yourself in peak condition, not that I'm really one to talk, I'm not exactly in peak condition myself. I've been traveling too much, and I think I've got some pretty major travel coming up, because I've been asked to come and speak at like a private birthday celebration / truth event in Thailand, and it looks like I'll actually be doing that. But yeah, if you want to get healthy and you want to find out some of this information, there's a link below. It's got a referral code from me on it. It's got anacapulco.com/Max Egan. If you click that link below, it's going to take you to the site, and you can sign up for this this video course. And like I said, it's like a lifetime thing. So once you sign up for it, you don't have to sit down and watch them all at once. You can just watch them at your leisure. It's a lifetime access to these files, and there's a lot of good shit in there, folks. I'm wondering what's going on with Anacapulco next year as well. I'm assuming that it's on, and I think tickets are actually on sale for it already. So if you can buy tickets, well, probably would be good to get in early. And again, if you do go and buy tickets for Anacapulco, you can do the same as last year. Just use my last name, Egan, I-G-A-N, and you'll get a 10% discount on the tickets. That's if they're available yet, but I would assume they are, because it's like June. So I would say tickets are on sale. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you to anybody who's sent me any kind words or kind email. Thank you to anybody who's ever made a contribution to the website. Very much appreciated, folks, all those people who do send me a helping hand. Apparently there's been someone coming to the Secret Garden here too, looking for me, trying to get hold of me. He's been emailing me. Brother, I get hundreds of emails, and if you come again, if you could perhaps leave some form of contact details at the desk when you speak to the girls, then it would be handy in knowing who you are and figuring out how to find you. So yeah. But again, I mean, coming to the Secret Garden, there's no way to really contact me. I mean, I only come here once or twice a week to do a video, and that's about it. But yeah, if you're going to do that, at least leave some type of something there for me to find out who it is. But yeah, that's about it, folks. I'm going to leave it there for now. As I said, thank you to everybody, and thank you to everybody speaking out, folks. I cannot stress this enough. Now is the time. Our voices need to be lifted, and our voices need to be heard. People need these words. People need real information. People need the inspiration to come together to do what needs to be done. And what needs to be done, as I've said before, is you've got to express a loss of confidence in your government. This is speaking their language. This isn't even really revolution or armed uprising. You know, people in France, look at the state of France. I mean, you should be going to the parliament or contacting the parliament and rallying the people and saying, how can you have any confidence in the government of this country? Look at the state of the country. Look what they've done. We didn't want them to bring all these migrants in. They did it anyway. We told them it was going to result in all these riots and all this stuff that's happening, and they did it anyway. And now we've got the whole country up in flames. We've got bus depots being burnt. We've got zoo animals running around the street, lions running around the street. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. And this has all been done by the Macron government while he's out dancing to Elton John. I mean, I no longer have any confidence in this government's ability to govern. It's the same with the Australian government. Look what they've done. Look what they're doing with this voice legislation. Look what they're doing with all this misinformation bullshit that they want to roll out, stopping you from having any opinion at all, because that's what's going to be misinformation. Anything you say that disagrees with government, that's going to be misinformation. You can't have an opinion on anything. You can't just post something and say, well, you know, in my opinion, you're a liar. Oh no, that's defamation. That's misinformation. That's this. In my opinion, COVID was a fraud. No, you can't say that. That's misinformation. You can get jail time for that, because they say, well, it's not an opinion. You can't be of the opinion that there's only two genders. You know, you can't have an opinion, folks. So this is what they're doing. So how can you have any confidence in this government? Every single nation on earth who has been subject to the bullshit of this whole COVID scam needs to express a loss of confidence in their government. Any government that is pushing this digital ID, any government that is doing all the shit these people are doing, you need to express a loss of confidence in their government's ability to govern, because that is speaking their language. Whatever they say to you, just say, no, I no longer have any confidence in your ability to make rational or sound decisions or to do anything that is beneficial to this country, simply because of your actions over the last 3 years, simply because our country is now overrun with migrants, the whole place is up in flames. You're prohibiting free speech, you're shutting down sections of the internet in France, you're banning people from Twitter from reporting the facts, you're doing everything you can to repress the people and to go along with the guidelines of the World Economic Forum, which is an unelected corporate body, which we didn't vote for and we don't want anything to do with. And this is happening in virtually every country, folks. Our governments have given power away to the World Economic Forum, which is an unelected corporate body that none of us want anything to do with. They've basically sold our country out. So how can you have any confidence in these people's ability to do anything right or to say anything honest? I mean, if you still do after what they've done over the last 3 years, then God help us all, folks. I mean, the world's nuts. It's gone completely nuts. And I was going to finish, which would be a nice short video if I can finish now. I'm pretty sure that's all that's on my list. I really do want to try to do some short videos, folks. Oh yeah, the wind farm. Speaking of sustainable energy, there was a Nebraska wind farm that was subject to a hailstorm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense that they're putting in all these solar panels everywhere. They want to go completely solar in Finland. They want all wind farms and they want solar panels in Finland. What happens if there's a hailstorm? But of course, it's all part of the plan, folks. All been done by design, all this shit. It's absolutely incredible. Oh yeah, and have you noticed all the billionaires dying? You've got to wonder whether they really are, whether they're just being disposed of and they're saying they're dying. Maybe, I mean, I guess if they're being disposed of, they're dying, but whether it's by natural causes or what's going on, but apparently 47 billionaires have died in the last little while. That seems to be pretty significant. I wonder what the plan is there, folks. Maybe they're all freaking out because everything's moving digital and they realise that they're about to lose all of their wealth. Because as I said, if you've got $1 billion, if you've got $1 billion in the bank and suddenly the currency goes digital, well, and it's got a shelf life, you know, it's got a use by date, well, what are you going to do with $1 billion? What, are you going to be able to spend this in the next 6 months? Better to leave it in the government's hands and then you apply to them when you want to use some of it. That's the way it's going to go, folks. And maybe it's all sort of coming home to them, just what they've been party to, all these people. Maybe they're all dying of heart attacks when they're seeing the writing on the wall, who knows. Maybe they're all dying from the jab. Anyway, folks, I'm going to leave it there for now. Nice short video, I think. And I will look forward to speaking to you again soon. Please take very good care until then. In Lakesh.